I don't think I have ever seen a game have this many players hate its guts, all while having a whole other sect of players heaping praise upon praise. And look, I get it. To a certain degree, this happens with every game that comes out. But not really like this, though. Even with From Software's past games, you still had your haters and your fanboys, but with the size that the studio has grown to, it feels like it's on steroids now. And much of this division is centered around the difficulty of the game. Not all of it. There are some other things like weak roguelike mechanics, poor progression, and a lack of new content and bosses. But I want to hone in on the difficulty aspect of this whole discourse, mostly because I feel it is probably causing at least a sizable portion of the drama, and at best, it's the main driver. And I think that people might not even realize that some of the other things that they have a problem with are highlighted and seem worse in part because of the frustration of dying over and over again. So today we are going to focus on one question. Is Nightreign too hard? I want to take a quick minute to tell you about today's sponsor, instantgaming.com. Instantgaming.com is an online retailer that sells digital game codes at insane discounts through bulk purchasing directly from developers and publishers, and then passing those savings on to you. They are not a marketplace, and they do not allow third-party selling, so you can trust the codes that you get. Plus, they have over 754,000 positive reviews on Trustpilot with a 4.7 rating to boot. Just create your account, select from one of over 15,000 different games, do a one-time identity verification, enter your payment method, and then instantly download your game and start playing. Quick and simple. Follow the link in the description to pick up a great game at an even better price. Now back to the video. So since this game has solos and trios, and they are both very different experiences, I'm going to talk about them both separately, starting with solos, since it's the most straightforward answer of the two. So with that said, solos was too hard, but it's not anymore. If you don't know, a patch was just released that gives solo players more runes from kills, so you can get to higher levels faster, and it also gives you one self-revive per night boss fight. So it is now pretty manageable in my opinion. But before the patch, it was just ridiculous. The enemy scaling wasn't much different from trios besides groups of enemies being more passive to keep you from having to fight big mobs all at the same time, but their health and damage was still really high, and if you went down, there was no way to get back up. You had to just start a new run back at square one, which is to be expected. It is a roguelike after all. But one of the big problems was that the only way to get good relics and make your character stronger was to beat the Night Lord, which is simple enough, except for the fact that it was so hard that only the top tier gamers that spent hundreds and thousands of hours memorizing boss movesets could actually do it. I spent a little over 8 hours running solos before the patch, and in that time I got to Gladius twice and lost both times. Now, I'm not saying that I'm the best of the best by any means, but I have played a lot of these kind of games, and I felt like I'd never held a controller in my life. Compare that to post-patch solos, and I made it to and beat Gladius on the first try. Now, unfortunately, I think they may have overreacted a little and made it too easy. I actually think the self-revive thing is going a little too far. Increased runes and less enemy health probably would have been good enough, but I agree that something needed to be done to keep players from just mass rage quitting. Now, I know that the comments will be filled with people claiming that they no-hit Gladius on their first try, and everybody needs to just stop complaining and get good. But even if that is true for you, it won't be true for the vast majority of players, and pre-patch solos just took the challenge too far to be fun for anyone outside of the top 10% of players. And listen, I love a good challenge. I'm a challenge junkie. I wish that there was some kind of toggle that would allow us to keep the original difficulty while giving new players the ability to change it to the more nerfed version. But even the challenge seeker in me was whimpering and crying when trying to play Nightreign solos pre-patch. And I think for the health of the game long term, it's a good thing that they did something. I just wish they didn't do quite that much. So now let's talk about trios. Because with solos, you could kind of half make the argument that it wasn't actually ever meant to be played that way. After all, the game's director, Junya Ishizaki, was very straightforward in interviews prior to launch, and he said that it could be played solo, but it was designed for 3 people. And while I think that is a bad way to go about making the game, at least he was honest. So since Trios is the bread and butter of the Nightreign experience, the game will rise or fall based on the player experience in this mode especially. So is it too hard? The short answer is no. But to further explain this, we need to talk about what too hard really means. Or perhaps a better way to phrase it would be too hard for who? If we're talking about the average casual gamer, then yes, it is too hard, even in its current state. Solos and trios both. To the average gamer, Nightreign will feel like an insurmountable mountain that many will choose not to climb. And that is exactly how it's supposed to be. From Software built their brand on the creation of difficult games not made for the average player. Dark Souls, Elden Ring, Sekiro, Bloodborne, all of these games require an above average amount of skill, knowledge, and time to complete. And Nightreign is no exception to this rule. The difficulty of the From Software Souls games is what took them from just another game with armor and swords to an accolade of achievement you could set in your mental trophy case. Because those that did choose to climb the mountain talk about it after reaching the top. They talk about the struggle of the climb and the satisfaction of completing what they didn't think they could. And it is that phenomenon that entices even some of those that gave up to give it another try. And then the cycle repeats itself over again. So Elden Ring Nightreign might be too hard for the average player, but it's not too hard in the context of what it was designed for. Now, it's not without its flaws. The progression is a little weak. Randoms can be very frustrating. There are a ton of Elden Ring bosses that are just asset flips. However, I will say this. The old bosses from the Dark Souls series, I would not include in that. I think that it's amazing to get to fight reskinned bosses from the older games, and I don't understand why people are complaining about this. Yes, it is sort of an asset flip, but it's also really cool for us players who fought them back in the day to get to refight them in a modern game, like a little mini remaster. To me, that is a feature, not a bug. But I digress. The point is that there is room for improvement, and much has already been done and will be done in the future. There's already going to be a DLC later this year that should bring even more bosses and classes, and they're even working on adding duos into the game as well. Now, why it launched without duos, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, but when it comes to difficulty in trios, I don't think that is an area that needs improvement, and the numbers further support this claim. Since launch, at the time of this recording, it has been consistently sitting at 200,000 to 300,000 concurrent players on Steam and has recently sold over 3.5 million copies. From what I can find, that is second all time for From Software, trailing only behind the original Elden Ring, which sold 12 million copies in the same time period. But I mean, come on, it's Elden Ring. I think you're doing pretty good if you're second behind Elden Ring. So the fact that it is maintaining higher player counts and selling plenty of copies means they must have done something right. Now you might be asking yourself, why would I say that it's good for trios to be hard, but solos was too hard? And the simple answer is that solos just took it way too far. My argument is not that trios is hard and that's good. Simple as that. No, my argument is that trios has hit that sweet spot between driving people absolutely mad and the adrenaline rush of a W. And I think that's exactly where a FromSoft game should fall. It needs to be hard enough that you feel that sense of accomplishment upon completion without being so hard that everyone just gives up. So is Nightreign too hard? Well, no, not anymore. Solos is fixed now and might actually be a little too easy, and trios is just about right, especially if you get on a good team. But let me know in the comments what you think about Nightreign's difficulty and what you'd like to see changed. Also, does anybody have Gino and Scumnut's number?